Hi, I'm Claudia Brancart, a producer from Up to Date, a podcast that covers the topics Kansas Cityans care about most. Every day, we have meaningful conversations with people who define Kansas City. We explore the city's character, which is sometimes complicated and hard to understand. So give us a shot and stay up to date with Up to Date.
It's late summer 2023 in a suburb near Kansas City, Missouri, and Paula Diaz walks out of her house with her 4-year-old granddaughter, Olivia.
And we were walking out across the little place where we go over to the barn. It was real early in the morning. All of a sudden, all these monarchs started coming down out of the trees. They had roosted overnight in the trees.
In your yard?
In our yard. And it was so magical. We just stood there and watched them. There's probably 100 at least of them. I mean, there were so many of them. So it was like a little tiny version of the Oyamel Forest to have it in my own yard. It was so cool.
What did Olivia think?
Oh my gosh, this is so cool, Grandma. We just were in awe. It was magical.
It's not total chance that these butterflies would stop in Paula's yard. The scene unfolded 13 years after what she recalls as her aha moment. See, at that time, Paula was taking these classes to become a master gardener, and one of them taught her about native plants.
And it was just like light bulb moment where you just stunk yourself in the forehead and go, that's so logical. I mean, it's so logical. Why are we not doing that? And
well, tell me about that light bulb moment. What was that's so logical?
I mean, just the whole thing of the insects have evolved with these native plants and they rely upon each other. They need each other.
Yet most of what she was used to gardening with were plants that evolved on other continents because, well, that's what most nurseries sell. And this class was the first time she learned that
the insects from Missouri aren't used to those.
And that the popularity of those plants from far away, combined with plenty of other very typical garden practices today, like our love of manicured lawns, can really make it hard for pollinators to survive.
It's not just the monarchs that can only eat milkweed.
Yeah.
Most of our butterfly species have a very specific food source.
Knowing all this revolutionized how Paula gardened, so that by the time 100 monarchs picked her yard to roost in 13 years later, she had loads of native flowers: milkweed, sweet coneflower, liatris, total butterfly magnets.
I've had like 12 monarchs on one liatris plant. They will push each other off the bloom. So funny to watch them.
Like, this one's mine. Go find your own. From the Kansas News Service and KCUR studios, you're listening to Up From Dust. I'm Celia Yopis-Jepson. From time to time, we're going to bring you how-to episodes, tips to replicate some of the concepts we've talked about on this show right where you live. Today, native plants, and specifically, how to pick a section of your lawn and ditch it to make room for them, so that you can draw pollinators and birds to your neighborhood and have something to captivate your imagination each time you step outside. No, it won't guarantee that 100 butterflies will suddenly flutter right in front of you and your grandkids' eyes, but who knows, maybe they will. And either way, you, your family, your friends can find your own picture-perfect memories among the creatures that are sure to visit your garden. Now, there are a lot of people who can talk about native plants: famous scientists, landscape architects who design acres at a time for fancy institutions. I picked Paula Diaz because she knows what it's like to learn really quality native plant gardening without a biology or landscaping degree. And that's the situation most of us are in. And maybe because she has spent her whole life loving gardening and then more recently transitioning to native plant gardening, she's great at meeting people where they are and bridging those worlds. Like when she first started adding native wildflowers to her yard, she lived on this very cookie-cutter suburban street. No one else was doing it, which can be a little awkward, but she really knew how to sell it.
My kids were young then, so when their friends were over or the neighbor kids were over, I would pick bouquets and send them home to the parents, pick up some vases at the thrift store or something, and so they can see that, oh, these really are flowers and they really are pretty.
Plus, she let all the kids help raise caterpillars so they could have some fun and learn about butterflies and the link to plants. As I mentioned, she is a master gardener. If you haven't heard of that, basically it's a program usually run by universities to train members of the public who really love gardening. And then those people take what they've learned and multiply the effect by sharing with others.
So much fun.
You can spot Paula volunteering at different events, like working at native plant sales, giving workshops, getting out the word that lots of insects are beneficial.
Bugs get a bad rap in our society.
Bugs get a bad rap. She's done consulting work, helps people start native plant gardens of their own, and is generally just a good ambassador for the idea that our neighborhoods can support wildlife.
5 of my neighbors that live surrounding me have asked to have some native plants put in their yards too. So we share and we buy and we work together.
So that's a bit about Paula. And I asked her to give me a non-daunting guide to getting started with native plants and to shrinking our lawns a bit, which ecologists say is a great idea because there's plenty of turf in the U.S. Understatement. Tens of millions of acres of manicured lawn, an upper-class tradition that kind of got out of hand some time ago.
Originally, in Europe, the folks who had a lot of money, they had enough land that they didn't have to plant crops on it.
That became what we call a lawn.
Oh, I have this much space and I don't even have to grow crops on it, so I'm really wealthy.
And eventually,
in the U.S., it was mostly after World War II.
That signal of success and respectability became something more and more of us could show off.
Lawns began to become a real thing for folks who were not living in great wealth on a vast tract of land.
And it wasn't just the amount of grass that changed. We chased a flawless look with the rise of chemicals that could kill any wildflowers that dared to nestle among our perfect green short-clipped blades. Common flowers, some of which had once been quite cherished, became blemishes.
Clovers and violets and all the other plants that we tend to try to destroy now.
So, all this takes an environmental toll, not just because of, say, weed killers or all the gas we burn on lawn mowing, but also just because manicured lawn isn't really much of a habitat, which has led to ideas like No Mow May, where people don't mow for a month to let those clovers and violets bloom for pollinators, or bee lawns, where people purposely seed short flowers into their grass with kind of the same goal. But Paula has long been a fan of a different approach, just flat out shrinking the amount of space that we use for lawns. And one way people have promoted this idea is homegrown national park. Simple concept. We love national parks, right? Well, what if we had more?
If every one of us took half of our lawn space, not the whole thing, not 3/4, just half of it, and put native plants into that space, it would be the biggest national park, if we refer to it that way.
Obviously not a literal national park, but the idea is create all this habitat across suburbia, towns, cities, so more creatures can coexist with us, like all those monarchs that use Paula's yard as a bed and breakfast en route to Mexico. There's a homegrown national park website where people set goals to add native plants to their homes. And then there's all these local Facebook groups where people encourage each other. And Paula is, in fact, the instigator of the one for Kansas City. Okay, so whether people are into the homegrown national park concept or any of the other flavors and groups of native plant gardening, The trend is that a lot of people are getting really fired up about the idea of their yards as habitat for pollinators and other wildlife. So, before we get some great tips from Paula on getting started, a quick note. These plants can be hard to find sometimes. Paula will give us the lowdown on where to look, but basically the issue is public interest is mushrooming.
The demand has grown so fast. I mean, it's phenomenally fast.
Like, there's a native plant sale each spring in a parking lot in Kansas City right by where I work. Paula remembers when that was just a tiny affair. Not anymore. Last year,
at the May sale, I think there were over 2,000 people in a 4-hour time frame that came through that sale.
You were there volunteering, like trying to herd the crowds and stuff. Yeah.
We tried like blocking people off because the sellers are still setting up.
You're like the bodyguard.
Yeah,
like
we put up
sale.
the stanchions and try to keep people back behind the chain.
It's hard to hold people back while sellers arrange their stock because they worry that their favorite plants are going to sell out. Look, I'm not talking like Black Friday level fisticuffs over a milkweed as though it were a flat screen TV, but yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm.
It was just, the demand was so great that they couldn't keep up with it. And it's wonderful and terrible at the same time because then you run out of plants too soon and then people get frustrated.
All right, let's get to the how-to. 6 steps to get rid of just some lawn, like a manageable amount of space for your very first native plant garden. I'll post a list of the books and resources that we mention on the Up From Dust page. Step 1, pick your site. Maybe along a fence or right against your house, or here's a nifty tip. If you already have trees, especially native ones,
like an oak or a hickory or a maple,
that is a fantastic place to start.
That's called a soft landing.
A soft landing. So lots of moths and butterflies lay their eggs on native trees. Like in Kansas City, a single oak tree could attract 400 different species of them. And a native plant garden beneath that oak would really help them out.
You want to plant at the base of the tree so that they have a better chance of survival.
Because those eggs turn into caterpillars that then munch on the tree leaves for a while and eventually move to the ground to do the whole chrysalis thing. And to these hopeful caterpillars, future butterflies of America, our manicured turf is a place of suffering.
Mother-forking shirtballs.
Get the reference?
This is the bad place.
Sorry, couldn't resist. It's my favorite show. But it does drive home the point. Lawns are their bad place. So many hazards. They can get stepped on or run over by a lawnmower, or the ground is really compacted and they can't wiggle into the soil and survive the winter, or they hide in the oak leaves, but then they get raked up and thrown away. Now, their dream scenario is to find a nice, welcoming bed of plants to hide in.
They can fall to the ground as they're meant to do and not be chopped up by the lawnmower then.
They can bed down, surrounded by columbines and woodland phlox and oak sedge. So around the base of a tree, a fun place to start your first flower garden if it's relevant to you. And it'll help bees and fireflies too. If this interests you, Paula recommends looking up Heather Holm, a biologist with a very thorough website on soft landings. Lots of pictures and specific species to get you going. Time for a quick break, but don't go anywhere because the next step is very important: killing the grass.
In the 1980s, Kansas City Public Schools got the money to build planetariums, petting zoos, and robotics labs.
They wanted to say, we have a swimming pool.
Kansas City's unprecedented desegregation plan envisioned a system of stunning new and remodeled magnet or theme schools.
But just a decade later, that investment was gone.
It was an attempt to bring things together.
How Kansas City tried and failed to desegregate its schools. Listen on KCUR's podcast, A People's History of Kansas City.
Okay, so you've picked a spot under a tree, along a fence, wherever. Step 2, kill the grass. One method, the weed eater.
And just weed eat whatever grass there is there down to the soil level. Cover it with cardboard.
Cardboard is an especially nice option under trees because either digging out all that turf or using herbicide could really backfire.
You sure don't want to harm the tree while you're planting other plants.
So weigh down the cardboard with mulch and wait. Without sun, grass dies. A couple of books out there, Prairie Up is one of them, summarize other ways to kill your grass too, sod cutters, etc. Every approach has its own pros and cons. Step 3 for your new flower bed. Make sure you know the site.
How moist the soil is. Which kind of soil do I have? Is it sandy? Is it gooey clay?
Plus, is it full sun, afternoon sun, dappled shade? And Paula wants you to know you can make a fantastic native garden anywhere.
Absolutely.
Just know what you've got. And then you can grab a cheat sheet to find species for it. GrowNative.org has a ton of these top 10 lists. So like top 10 flowers for full sun, top 10 for wet areas, etc.
And Deep Roots KC has Sweet 16 list.
16 easy-to-grow native species that are real winners for insects. Deep Roots KC is based in Kansas City. They'll even visit your yard to talk about how to garden there. GrowNative.org is run by the Missouri Prairie Foundation, and it's a very thorough resource for several Midwest states. But if you plan to go full-on plant nerd and you want to browse lots of species, Paula also recommends
the Midwest Native Plant Primer.
That's by Alan Branhagen, formerly of the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum and Powell Gardens in Missouri. And if you're not in the Midwest, she says, find your state's native plant society.
They can then refer you to things that might be much more local to you within that state or region.
One more book rec.
A lot of times when I'm doing a tabling at an event or something, people are like, well, what's the first thing I should read? I always say, well, Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy is the first thing you should read.
His books are where the homegrown national park concept comes from.
His research, that's the why we need, must, absolutely can do this.
So now you've got an idea of which plants you want. Step 4, find them. Typical garden centers really only carry a handful of super popular native species. So you'll need native plant sellers to find any real selection.
To find those places, go to the Grow Native website.
Click on the resource guide for a list of them, even an interactive map. And if you're not near one, some will mail seeds or plants to you. And side note, Paula says these nurseries are a great way to steer clear of plants that are pre-treated with long-lasting pesticides. And that matters because you're hoping to attract insects, of course, not to fend them off.
Also, if your budget is really tight, ask around. We have a Kansas City area native plant exchange. People are always happy to share things that they have extras of.
Another cost-effective option.
Start from seed.
Now, perennial seeds will take a few years to mature, so her other cost-effective trick in the meantime is this.
A lot of times I'll throw zinnia seeds in a bed while things are becoming established.
A typical garden annual, not native to Kansas City, but super cheap and grows fast for just a really accessible, well-loved placeholder.
It's popular with the insects. It's colorful and pretty. And it's recognizable to the neighbors.
Mm-hmm. I've literally seen a hummingbird build its nest in a maple branch just above a zinnia patch so that it could take full advantage of the nectar in those flowers. All right then, step 5, get your hands dirty. Every native plant book and website will give you slightly different advice on doing the actual planting. Space your plants 12 inches apart or 24 inches apart, etc. Basically, some people plant super dense right off the bat, others don't. I mean, it can be expensive. Do what works for you. But Paula does say that eventually you really kind of do want your flower bed to be full.
Plants want to touch each other. They don't want acres of mulch in between them.
It's good for birds and insects, and ultimately for you too as the gardener, because you'll spend less time weeding.
And eventually you don't have to put any mulch down at all.
Also, she recommends layers. In a woodland garden, that means shrubs under trees, flowers under shrubs, and plenty of native plant groups post sample layouts online that can help you out. Number 6, last step, maintenance. coexisting with wildlife does admittedly mean embracing a different look than a lot of us have been used to. So leaving those leaves under your oak tree instead of raking them away, or leaving your purple coneflowers alone when they're done blooming.
The seeds are there for the creatures.
Like goldfinches.
The stems are there for the stem nesting bees over the winter. We need those leaves that are the camouflage for the chrysalises that look exactly like a dead leaf.
If you do want to cut down your plants in winter, Paula offers this option.
Try to leave at least 12 inches to 24 inches attached to the soil where the plant was.
To still give insects some space.
It's a process to twist our minds back out of the everything has to be cleaned up and vacuum the leaves that are under the brushes. And I literally drove up to a house where the husband was vacuuming with the shop vac under the shrubs by the front walk while the wife wanted to know about native plants in the back. And I was just like, oh boy, this will be interesting.
Sounds like a case where the husband and wife had some different opinions about what their landscaping should be.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room, societal expectations. All right, so what's your philosophy on, do you want to appease the neighbors?
Just me, my opinion is you got to live with your neighbors unless you're planning to move. I like to like my neighbors, and I want them to not feel annoyed every time they look at my home. I'm okay with them not loving it.
The pressure to keep your yard like the yards around you is real, depending on where you live. I met one person who ripped out their entire lawn at once and ended up with very angry neighbors and multiple visits from city coders. People worry about property values, to put it plainly. And it does freak some people out if suddenly their neighbor has what looks kind of like a prairie in the front yard. But at the same time, shrinking lawns and replacing them with native plants is good for the environment. So there's a debate about what approach to take to doing all this, and we're certainly not going to solve that one today. Suffice it to say, though, your native plant garden can look as prairie-like or natural woodland-like or formal traditional garden-like as you decide. Every look is possible. Paula has tried to kind of walk a line of doing her thing.
I plant for my own pleasure and for the creatures around me.
But in a way that she hopes people will get it. Especially when she lived on that kind of cookie-cutter street that we mentioned earlier.
I had over 121 species of native plants in my yard, but they were in beds. Put signage that says it's a Monarch Way station. If you label things for people to understand, it makes it a lot easier for them to accept it.
Did you ever get complaints?
No.
So take that as just one example of one person who was successful in her neighborhood. What's the rewards for you of gardening?
Well, one of my neighbors, we were just talking, and she says, your yard is so full of life. That's it. It's the life. Now she's planting natives too. There's always a bird that's singing or frogs that are croaking. I see the beauty of those sweet coneflowers that get ridiculously large, even in the wintertime when it's just the brown stems, because I know that the bees are making their nests in there. Being able to go outside and just walk around and see life that happened because you planted what you planted. It helps your heart. It really does.
Up from Dust is a production of the Kansas News Service, aka the NPR stations of Kansas and KCUR studios. This episode was reported and written by me, Celia Yopis-Jepsen. My editors are Mackenzie Martin and Stephen Caranda. Big thanks to Suzanne Hogan, Gabe Rosenberg, and Geneviève Demarteau. Jessica Cornelissen is the artist behind our podcast logo. Music by David Condos, my fantastic former co-host, Tom Lonnie, Milktooth, and Blue Dot Sessions. Next time on Up From Dust, what if we could have darker night skies again, not just in really remote places, but also where we live? We'll visit a special place, one of just 12 like it in the whole world. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Everyone has a favorite memory that sticks in their brain. Your wedding day, a concert.
These emotional components are also going to be part of our memory, that we can do a time travel, we can recall a fact.
I'm Kate the Chemist. How we remember on Seeking a Scientist, made possible by the Stowers Institute.